Rotation, it's your baby's first movement. Something we're not taught, something we don't think about, but it happens, and it needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen, your child will not progress in the manner they were meant to for milestones. It's just pure physics. Let me explain. When the baby is coming into position to a full-term delivery with contractions, the womb is going through active phases, and they're also going through passive phases. So the active muscles are contracting down onto this child, right? But you have passive muscles within the womb where the baby can get into position. They turn. They need this force to start to turn, right? And get into position. There's no rotation in the womb because there's sort of, in the amniotic fluid, it's meant to be a frictionless environment. So you have here, if you see a baby like this, cord wrapped around the neck, all these kind of things. And I know people go, well, there wasn't oxygen deprivation. Whenever there's a deviation to the structure of movement needed for a successful delivery, there will be deviations, right? And this can come from manual, just the doctor's touch, or again, what we mentioned were vacuums or forceps and all of these kind of things that interfere with the process of delivery. Now, that being said, during this process, the mother's life and the baby's life are the priority. But also, you have to realize that a baby that goes home alive, trach, it doesn't matter. If they go home alive, under medical concerns, it's considered a healthy or a viable birth, a successful birth, because they left the hospital alive. That has nothing to do, is that baby ready for development? So during this phase, as the baby comes out, and I presented this 5 times over, there's tons of videos and stuff that you can watch, and you can see a live MRI where it's done, but the head vacuums out and goes into, it leaves the mother, goes through this very specific process of the vaginal canal. That's why someone actually posted in the link about the butterfly. If you take the cocoon off the butterfly, they'll never fly. They need the squeeze. The squeeze is part of the process in delivery for warm-blooded animals. And so when that happens, so the head presents first. And it's the first time the skeletal system starts to articulate within gravity in opposition to gravity. Please go away that gravity is a pulling force. Gravity is a pulling force for an inanimate object. I get it, if we fall down. It's not that gravity is pulling us down, we're binding to the next rotational plane, which is our Earth. Right now I'm probably going about 900 miles an hour and you just wouldn't know it. And that's part of the rotation. So our organization, for all functional movements has to include rotation. It doesn't matter if we're 85 or we're at half a second old. But at that same split second is the collection of oxygen within the cells, especially in the skeletal system. So imagine a balloon going from cold air into hot air, right? And the head expands in, and that starts creating that momentum that's coming out. That's what brings a spine in, and that rotation has a certain momentum. Now again, if that process is interrupted, it doesn't matter. It means that the child has to have oxygen deprivation. It doesn't mean that the child had to go through trauma. We've changed the momentum and the introduction of gravity through rotation into the baby's system. And we also don't know at that point, does a child has had birth trauma in the womb? They could have had a stroke in utero, brain bleeds in utero, things happen. Cancer, baby gets born with cancer. Cancer is a mess. Cancer succumbs to gravity. We oppose gravity. That's why cancer is so rough on our systems. And then there's birth traumas that we know about, but there's also genetics. I saw a great film where the mom was concerned that the doctor mishandled the child at birth, and it really just proved my theories because her placenta birthed straight and the baby fell from her. And the doctor wasn't expecting that because the placenta's going one way and the baby's going another way. That's because based off of my theories, that baby was presenting with genetics, and that genetics, or the failure of rotation within the DNA and within the cellular structure of the child, that child is succumbing to gravity. This is why most genetics are a low tone basis, or literally you see that the respiratory stress and all of those kind of things associated with low tone, but it's really that the system has a very lack of rotation within the muscle structures, within the sarcomeres. That presentation's from Oxford of all of that with the myosin-actin collection and the ATPs, again, being off. So in cerebral palsy, you have very little bit of it, but also with genetics, you have a little bit of it because of the swing or the tightness, the rotation can't come in and out, and an active passive. That active passive phase that the mothers are introducing to the child is the first time too that the child's body is feeling a force against it, the first friction, and that friction is meant to have for successful delivery. I don't care if you're from the Northern Rim, Mongolia to South Africa, or the United States of America. It doesn't matter what culture it was from. We're meant to deliver babies the exact same way. Once you have a C-section, that C-section might be a full-term C-section, but went into an emergency situation, but the baby was still going through this phase. But every C-section after that has to be planned. They do not get that kind of experience. So that's where you cause those kind of complications. Again, the biggest misconception and what is not done for any of our babies immediately after birth or shortly thereafter, there needs to be an evaluation. The newborn movement assessment is simple, it's easy, it needs to be done on all babies, whether you think that they're okay or not, cute, happy, sad, I don't want to, it doesn't matter what it is. If you don't do that newborn movement assessment, you're not going to know where your baby is. Now, I can tell if a baby's okay the second they're born. All you have to do is give the baby to me, and I can tell you if they're going to be okay or not. Why I have that talent doesn't matter. That talent needs to be taught, and more people around the world need to know it. You shouldn't be coming to someone on Facebook or YouTube. I'm glad that these profiles are here, or platforms, I should say, but with your child needs optimal development. And so waiting for a traditional diagnosis, and that's where a lot of places are. Your child doesn't get services and let you have the diagnosis. Medical diagnosing is here. Movement is here. They intertwine, they connect. You've got to be working on both. And so this whole big thing, nothing happens during the first few months. The most important movements to your babies happen in the first few months. They might not look like much, but if they can't initiate this, they're not going to be reaching for a cup. You can't go for a full-on muscle-based system when they don't know how to initiate that weight transfer transitional movements through rotation. Rotation makes gravity appear easier. So in other words, if I go like this, gravity seems easy, right? But if I go like this and I'm doing a load, it's the same force against my body. This is harder to do. And this is where you see babies going into dystonia or those kind of features, or they're going into reactive airways and respiratory distress, because the act of breathing against gravity is just becoming too hard. To oppose gravity, you have to have rotation. It doesn't matter if you're a bullet, that Falcon 9 that's going to go off tomorrow and I better be there, or the human body. To oppose gravity, its escape velocity has been really used in the space program forever. They just forgot to use it on the humans. That's how it works. When a sunflower comes up, it follows the sun, the rotation is there, it's wicking the water, it follows, it goes nocturnal, and it comes around. That's how a flower works in rotation against the Earth and sun relationship. The solar systems are all spiral rotational based. The sun's rotation, anything that offers life has rotation. The moon, no rotation, no life. And so, life, by the way, is an exchange of molecules. I know Venus is too hot for us, but it still rotates. It still has molecule exchange. so those are the things I need to look at. And I know most new parents could just give a rat's about what's going on with the sciences of movement, and I'm fine with that. They don't have to know all these things. But to not, as professionals, that we don't come in and start working with our babies and start evaluating that key process. Rolling over has rotation. Feeding my face has rotation. You can't tell me one milestone that does not have rotation. So it doesn't matter if you have CP or autism or SMA or Joubert syndrome. And I can go on and on and on. What people are looking for is strength, no strength, too much muscles. It doesn't matter. If the rotational responses are incorrect for that system, and it can happen all the way down to the DNA, that system, that child, that adult, it doesn't matter, will be my client. And this is the part that we have to catch so much earlier. When I realized that way back when, with a lot of trainings that I've done, why I was different, I'm like, when I realized that rotation, and I'd already been working with rotational touch-based responses before anybody taught me, it just was natural to me. And when it all came together back in 2014, it's really been something. And so the whole research that I've been doing since then is just been tremendous, overwhelming at times, because sometimes when nobody else sees it. But that's why it happens. I get it, trauma happens. I'm not saying, I get it that people can't nurse or don't want to nurse their child. It's a huge rotational milestone. But what I'm trying to say is, and that's why I'm doing all the milestones this year, because nobody knows what even a milestone is, and I've got to re-clarify everything and get them back on track. But what they don't realize is that it's okay. It's not about missing a milestone. What it is, it's about missing the movements necessary within that milestone. So no milestone can be missed. They just can't. Taking out crawling by the government, everybody should have been up in arms, but everybody now says, oh, that's okay. It's not. And crawling is crawling, not army crawling, not bear crawling, not club crawling, crawling. 4 points. So that's what needs to be looked at within the human body. And those are the things that need to be addressed. And so when certain milestones are missed, delayed, deviated, whatever is your language to them, you need to go back and put them into the system. I can work on right now on again, a 90-some-year-old woman and work on crawling. I don't expect her to go crawl down the hallway because she's going to still do stuff that's incorrect for her system. She doesn't have the knee pads for it. She can't get up again. She doesn't have the vision for it. Whatever is the reason, I can have her sound asleep on my table, and I can, through my touch, because I know what functional touch is, I can put crawling into her system without her even experiencing what we consider as a crawl. And that's another biggest misconception we've got to take away from the babies, is doing a visual assessment. We are not designed for exterior movements, for linear-based movements. We are designed for interior-based movements and rotational responses. That's how we oppose gravity. That's how it works. We're not linear. And that's what needs to happen in the process. It can be very simple, but at the same time, I know to many that seems very complex. But if you don't have weight transfer, transitional skills, and rotational responses, you will have a developmentally delayed or globally delayed child. So it's going after the movements. It's not about the brain, it's about the movements. The movements organize the brain. No difference in me. My movements organize who I am today. They organize who you are. If I say, how are you doing? I'm asking you how you're moving, in a sense. We think that turns into an emotional-based response or all that muscle-based response. It's still movement within those three principles. If those are messed up, those key things, we're in trouble. Or your baby's in trouble, whoever we're looking at. So it doesn't matter, again, stroke, Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, autism, the common movement denominator to what creates, in a sense, a client for me, or special needs, or however you want to look at whatever your verbiage is the lack of those three skills, but mainly based off of the issues with rotation.